Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Taco. We're taking on our pandemic projects. Today we're going to work on a medium-size Mitchell. It's the Mitchell Epic. It's the EP2000, which generally indicates like a 20-size reel. I'd say this one's between the two. I got this one from a distributor, and it's a new reel, or at least it's my understanding it's a new reel, so I think we'll just take it apart and see what it's all about. A lot of folks ask me about Mitchell reels. Mitchell is part of Pure Fishing. It has gone a long way from the 300s. They used to be quite the technology. Now I think they're just kind of job reels. But let's take it apart and let's see. So I like to remove the exterior pieces of a reel first. You'll notice a couple of things as I'm doing that. The first is that I'm wearing a protective glove on my hand. The second one is that I carry a parch tray, simply the bottom of a milk jug, but it serves its purpose. Alright, we're going to take the little click ratchet and shim off. That way we're going to be able to remove the rotor. And sometimes this shim gets a little sticky, so if you have a little utility knife or something, you can pry up on it from underneath. That'll help get it moving. That shim washer is there to level the spool lining. So if you find that you're coming all the way up top with lining and very little on the bottom, you need to add a washer. And if you're heavy on the bottom and not on the top, you need to remove a washer. But that's kind of how it works generally. Alright. When you go to remove the handle, look at the side over here. If that button is spinning, that means you have a shaft that goes through with a screw on it. So we're going to remove the screw and the handle, and you'll see the shaft as we pull that out. We just did one the other day on an older Ryobi, and it interestingly enough had a long screw that connected into this side. So regardless, you can't take the handle off without removing the screw in this situation. There's an opposite side. Some of these are screwed in. Don't try to unscrew without noticing whether you have that handle in the proper position there. Okay, we're going to grab a Phillips head screwdriver to take the set screw off the rotor. This is all leading to removing the case. We'll be able to remove the rotor here. Set screw goes into the bucket there. And then we got to find the right, looks like it's an 11mm wrench for the removal of that top nut that's holding the rotor on. It is. And this is a good example here. This one, if you go to typically what you would do to remove a nut, that is go counterclockwise, that actually tightens this one. So if you start doing that and you feel it's tightening, then you'll realize it's a reverse threaded nut and that it has to come off in a clockwise fashion. Once you do that, then we should be able to remove the rotor. There's a little shim washer which goes on the bearing here. And we'll check here. We have an instant anti-reverse in this, so that's a nice little feature of this reel. Now you don't have to go and do anything here. This is a new reel, so you certainly don't need to do anything, but if you needed to service the bearing, you could remove these 3 screws and that'll give you access to remove that bearing. Alright, I needed to remove that rotor because I want to remove the side case so that I can service the gears, and one of those side plate screws is hiding under the rotor there. So when you first get the reel that you're going to service, whether you own it or otherwise, look at how the side plate attaches. If you look underneath the reel and you see that this is solid here, then you know that you're going to have to remove the rotor to remove the side plate. If there's a break in the line, in other words, right here, there's a line, then you can remove this side plate without doing the rotor. So take a look at that as you go. I'm laying these screws out on the table right now. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to make sure they're all the same screws. There's a possibility that it could be a shorter or a longer screw, and if it is, that's where you want to note the location. And sure enough, there's an example of it right there. This side plate screw is shorter on the bottom, It may also be shorter on this side too, we'll see. And the risk you run is if you put a long screw in a short hole, you'll strip out, and if you put a long screw in or a short screw in a long hole, it may not grab. So we have 3 that are one size, and then the smaller size belongs in the bottom here. Once you do that, then we should be able to remove this. I'm just looking for the bump guard here. It would seem to me that we should be able to just pull this out. The bump guard is attached by one of those screws, so it's important to note that it's attached by the screw on the right hand side. Alright, we're going to take this off, and interestingly enough, this came from a distributor. It's probably been sitting in his warehouse for a while because that's a very dry reel. So we want to take precaution here to make sure that it gets the proper lubrication. In this case, we can pull this one up, and we don't need to do much here. We don't need to remove the axle shaft. Again, this is a new reel, but if you had to remove the axle shaft, you can take the single set screw in the crosswind block off, and I'm just going to go ahead and use a fishing reel grease. In this case, it's Penn Precision reel grease, to get the grease back onto the pinion gear, get the grease back onto the crosswind gear, and put a little bit of grease onto the crosswind gear's face so that the crosswind block can rock and roll. You can see that this has been sitting for a while. All of the grease just kind of found the lowest point of the reel, and that's what happened here. All the grease that was on the gear just kind of slid to the bottom, so it was probably stored laying down on its side. We're going to just make sure that the teeth get grease again. In this case, you want to check all the teeth, make sure that they're uniform. You know, every now and then a distributor who's selling these reels doesn't know the history behind them. Sometimes, or most times, these reels come back just because there's a next generation reel and they're filling in on that. In some cases, they come back because they were parts of rod and reel combinations, and if that's the case, then you want to make sure you check them out. Most of the time it's because the rod broke, but in some cases it's because the reel had an issue, so you want to check that out. I don't know if we can do it this way or if we have to wrap it around. We're going to try. I guess the answer is that this has to go in first. Then we can hook to one side, and we can get that holder into the other. Missed that. Try that again. You need to hook the bottom piece in first. There we go. And then we remember that the short screw is the one that comes on this side. So let's put that one in first. And then a long screw is going to hold that bump guard on, so let's do that, just so we don't have to hold the bump guard or anything while we're at that. So overall, we saw a basic reel here. This is a freshwater reel. It's got a nice feature function with the instant anti-reverse up top. It's got enough going for it that you should be able to land pretty much any fish you want. It's a single ball bearing. It's just the one up top. The side plates are just bushings, so it's not an overly engineered reel. I have no idea what this reel would price out at, but my guess is it's probably in the $25, $29 range, and that you know, it's meant for light tackle fishing, and carries the Mitchell name, which at one point meant everything. By today's standards, I guess we could have a debate about that. Alright, I want to put a little bit of oil. Again, let's pretend that we're servicing this as opposed to a new one. We are servicing it. It dried out in the warehouse. You would flood that bearing with some reel oil. In this case, I use an aftermarket oil. It's called Reelex, but any fishing reel oil will do. And then we're going to just go ahead and reinstall the rotor. Make sure that that lock nut is in its place. Remember when we took the nut off here that we took it off in a clockwise, so the traditional way of taking a nut off is actually the way that this one is going to tighten. And use your hand to tighten it, because you don't want to cross thread the nut. This will just take a little bit of patience to get it, but eventually you'll get it right. And we're not quite there. It's kind of interesting because you're so used to doing it in one direction that it's kind of awkward to do it in the other, but we got it now. So tighten it down as much as you can by your hand. Then you can finish it with that 11mm wrench. And then we can get that set screw. And that set screw is going to keep that nut from spinning with the rotation of the reel. Just like that. And then we come back and we have the click ratchet. We have the little shim washer for the spool lining. And this, again, new reel, but let's take a look and see what we have at the top here in the drag department. I would expect to see plastic or Teflon drag washers or felt. Just curious. And we have felt drag washers. So again, under the notion here that these haven't been serviced in a while, you can take a little cloth and there's some oil in there, and that's what you do with felt washers. You oil them. Yes, they're very dry. So we're going to take that reel oil and a couple of dots around it. That keeps the washer flexible. And they alternate. That keyed or eared washer always goes in the middle. Now, felt washers are perfectly acceptable. You don't think that that's an economy practice. Penn Fierce, Shimano Sustains, others have had the felt washers in them, so it's a perfectly acceptable type of a washer. If you get into big game fish, the washers tend to shred because of the load that they're under. But if you're fishing a freshwater reel like this one, there's no worry about the holding power of that. Okay, and then we can just simply slide that on. Button this down and let's see how it feels with the oils in it. Of course, you got to put the handle on. Check our parts tray, make sure that that's empty. And while we're doing this, I want to thank all of the first responders and essential personnel during this pandemic. We couldn't be to where we are without your efforts, and we do really appreciate you nursing those that have had the virus back to health. Addressing all of the issues that have come with this, and staying vigilant in the practice of your profession that makes it easier on everybody else. Well, that quieted this reel down quite a bit. So I think what happened here was when this got to the distributor, it probably got stored this way. All of the grease leaked out of the main gear, just kind of settled and pooled. The heat of a warehouse, I imagine, was what caused it to dry out, and now it's ready to go back fishing. So there you go. I'm going to put just a drop of oil onto each seam and a drop of oil onto the bail as well. I'm going to flip that bail just to make sure it's working. There you go. So a nice reel overall, and we'll get this one out fishing. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please, if you did, subscribe to see more. If you have a reel that needs to be serviced, I do service reels by mail, and you can get the information for that on the business card that follows this video. So with that, please stay safe, practice your social distancing, wear the masks, do all the things that the authorities are asking us to do, and we'll all together will beat this pandemic. So with that, thank you for watching. Have a great day.